It is the most famous structure ever built by human hands, a dragon of stone and earth that snakes its way across mountains, deserts, and grasslands. For decades, we were told a famous myth that it is the only man-made object visible from space. That's false, but the truth is actually far more incredible. When we think of the Great Wall of China, we usually picture a continuous, unending brick fortress. But history tells a different story. The Great Wall is not one wall. It is a massive, overlapping network of fortifications, trenches, and towers built over 2 millennia by different dynasties, stretching for over 13,000 miles. But why was it built? Who were the emperors so terrified of that they would sacrifice millions of lives to build the largest military defense system in human history? Today, we are going back in time to explore the engineering marvel, the brutal human cost, and the epic battles of the Great Wall of China. This wasn't just a wall, it was a machine of war. And this is the story of how it defended an empire. To understand the wall, you have to understand the geography of China. To the south and east, China is protected by oceans and jungles. To the southwest, the towering Himalayas. But to the north, there is the steppe, a massive, unforgiving ocean of grass. The people of the steppe were nomads. They didn't build cities, they lived in the saddle. Tribes like the Xiongnu and later the Mongols were master horsemen and deadly archers. During the winter, when the grass died, these nomadic tribes would look south to the wealthy agrarian civilization of China, and they would raid. For early Chinese states, fighting nomadic cavalry was a nightmare. Infantry couldn't catch them. They would strike out of nowhere, pillage, and vanish back into the grasslands. The Chinese needed a way to neutralize the horse, and the answer was a wall. By the Warring States period, various Chinese kingdoms had already built walls to defend against each other and against the northern nomads. But everything changed in 221 BC. Enter Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, the man who gave us the terracotta army. After conquering his rivals, he looked to the north. He ordered his top general, Meng Tian, to drive the Xiongnu nomads out and to connect the existing state walls into one massive barrier. The first Long Wall was born. But this wasn't the beautiful brick wall we see on postcards today. The Qin dynasty wall was built mostly of rammed earth. Workers would set up wooden frames, fill them with local soil, gravel, and sometimes branches, and pound it down layer by layer until it was rock solid. In the desert, they used sand and reeds. In the mountains, they stacked unshaped stones. The human cost was unfathomable. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, peasants, and convicts were forced into labor. They worked in freezing winters and boiling summers. Ancient poems refer to the wall as the longest cemetery on earth. It was said that for every stone laid, a life was lost. Qin Shi Huang's empire didn't last long, collapsing shortly after his death, but the concept of the wall survived. Fast forward a little over 100 years to the Han Dynasty. Under Emperor Wu of Han, China was expanding, and with expansion came a new, highly lucrative venture, the Silk Road. Caravans laden with silk, spices, and jade were traveling west to trade with the Roman Empire in the Middle East. But these caravans were sitting ducks for nomadic raiders. The Han Dynasty realized that to protect their wealth, they had to protect the road. They extended the Great Wall further west than ever before, deep into the brutal Gobi Desert, culminating in the Yumanguan, the Jade Gate Pass. Because they were building in a desert with no earth or stone, Han engineers got incredibly creative. They used layers of sand, gravel, and a type of desert shrub called tamarix. The salt in the local water chemically reacted with the gravel, basically created ancient concrete. Sections of this wall are still standing over 2,000 years later. But the Han didn't just build a wall, they built an ancient telegraph system. Imagine you were a guard in a watchtower miles away from civilization. You see a cloud of dust on the horizon. The Xiongnu are coming. How do you warn the capital? You don't have radios. A horse takes days. You use smoke and fire. During the day, guards burned wolf dung, which created a thick black smoke that went straight up in the windless desert air. At night, they lit massive fires. They also used flags and drum beats to specify the size of the attacking army. One smoke signal meant 500 enemies, 2 meant 3,000, 4 meant 10,000. A warning could travel 300 miles in just 24 hours. By the time the nomads reached the inner gates, the Chinese army was already waiting for them. Despite these incredible defenses, the wall was not invincible. In the 13th century, a leader emerged from the steppes who would shatter the world: Genghis Khan. The Mongols simply marched around the walls, bribed the guards, or found vulnerable passes. They conquered China, establishing the Yuan dynasty. For a century, the Great Wall was useless because the people it was built to keep out were now sitting on the emperor's throne. But in 1368, the Chinese fought back. They pushed the Mongols back into the steppes and established a new era, the Ming dynasty. And the Ming emperors were absolutely determined to make sure a nomadic invasion never, ever happened again. This is the Great Wall you know, the Ming Dynasty Wall. It is a masterpiece of military engineering, built not out of dirt, but out of kiln-fired brick and granite. The Ming Wall was an unbelievable undertaking. To bind the bricks together, they used a mortar made of burnt limestone mixed with sticky rice soup. Yes, sticky rice. The amylopectin in the rice created a microscopic bond so strong that in many places weeds still cannot grow between the bricks today. The Ming Wall wasn't just a barrier, it was a raised military highway. It was wide enough for 5 horses or 10 infantrymen to march side by side along the top. This meant troops could be redeployed across mountainous terrain at incredible speeds. The wall was fortified with around 25,000 watchtowers. These towers were arsenals, living quarters, and fortresses. If the enemy breached the wall, the guards could lock themselves inside these towers and fire down from the arrow slits. The strategy was brilliant. Build high on dangerous passes. They built the wall on the sharpest mountain ridges. Why? Because you can't ride a horse up a cliff. The wall forced the nomads to funnel into heavily fortified choke points called passes, like the famous Jiayuguan in the west and Shanhaiguan in the east, where the wall literally meets the ocean. But all the bricks in the world are useless without the men to guard them. Life on the Great Wall was grueling. Soldiers were drafted from their villages and stationed on the wall for years at a time. The winters dropped to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The summers were blisteringly hot. Boredom was the primary enemy, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. But when the nomads did attack, the Ming soldiers were armed to the teeth. They utilized the Zhuge Nu, the repeating crossbow. A soldier could fire 10 bolts in 15 seconds, raining death down on the attackers. And, because this is the Ming Dynasty, they had the ultimate trump card: gunpowder. Guards used early cannons called Frankish culverins, imported and adapted from European designs. They threw primitive grenades made of iron shells filled with black powder. They even had landmines and fire lances, essentially spears with a shotgun-like barrel of gunpowder and shrapnel strapped to the end. The wall was a gauntlet of fire and iron. From a psychological standpoint, the wall was just as powerful as its physical defenses. It was a line drawn in the dirt. On one side was civilization, agriculture, and order. On the other side was the barbarian wilderness. The wall was the shield of the Chinese worldview. Yet, for all its majesty, the Great Wall would ultimately fail. But it wasn't destroyed by a catapult or scaled by an unstoppable army. It was undone by human treason. The year is 1644. The Ming Dynasty is collapsing from the inside. A massive peasant rebellion has captured Beijing, and the emperor has hanged himself from a tree in the imperial garden. Meanwhile, at the eastern end of the Great Wall, the impregnable Shanhai Pass, a Ming general named Wu Songui is holding off a new threat from the north, the Manchus. Hearing that the capital had fallen to rebels, Wu Songui made a fateful decision. He opened the gates of the Great Wall. He let the Manchus inside, hoping they would help him defeat the rebels. The Manchus swept through the gates, crushed the rebels, and then they just kept the throne for themselves. They established the Qing dynasty. Because the Qing Empire expanded its territory far north into Manchuria and Mongolia, the Great Wall was suddenly right in the middle of their empire. It no longer represented a border, it was obsolete. For the next 300 years, the greatest military machine in history was abandoned. Nature took over. Earthquakes brought down watchtowers. Local villagers dismantled entire sections to build homes and pigsties. The dragon went to sleep. It wasn't until the 20th century that the Great Wall was recognized not as a symbol of isolation, but as a monument of national pride and global heritage. Massive restoration projects began, saving sections like Badaling and Mutianyu from the brink of collapse. So, did the Great Wall of China work? Critics will point out that nomads breached it multiple times, but looking at it as an impenetrable barrier is missing the point. The Great Wall wasn't designed to stop every single person. It was designed to stall, to warn, to limit the mobility of cavalry, and to protect the economic lifeline of the Silk Road. It managed border trade, levied taxes, and projected the power of the emperor to the very edges of the known world. It is a monument of blood, sweat, and breathtaking genius, a physical manifestation of an empire's will.